Hi, welcome to Logistic Unlock, a podcast by Alpega. Here we focus on the decisions shaping modern logistics. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by Julia Seidel. Julia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
Likewise. You've been part of this industry for a long time. Could you briefly share your journey and the perspective you bring today?
Yeah, of course. So I joined more than 7 years Alpega now. And at that time, logistics was completely new for me. And luckily, there were a lot of people who were long in the industry with Alpega who I could learn from and pick their brains on a lot of topics. So I'm getting into it more and more. But it's still a very complex industry. So it's still very exciting to learn every day.
And a lot of challenge to
new things, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you. And I like to start here. So you're CFO at Alpega.
Correct.
From your CFO point of view, where is the biggest unmanaged risk today?
There's really, in my view, a lack of real-time visibility on the cost in the logistics industry. And sometimes costs are poorly modeled because people don't really look at the end-to-end process. They rather look at one part of the problem only, and they don't look at the whole platform from planning and sourcing, how to include partners on the platform and so on. It's more like every individual manages a small part of that journey. And another point is also that decisions are often taken locally by local management without the view of and the knowledge of the end-to-end process. So if you ask me, yes, budget overruns are a risk, but the bigger risk is actually that decisions are not taken well informed and the information is not even available to CFOs.
That's a very interesting point. To deep dive on it, maybe what surprises board most about logistics finance?
That's a good question. And actually, as a board member, they are very often surprised how structural costs are and how little is really flexible and changeable, especially when supply chain disruption hits, then it becomes very obvious to them. Yeah. And then obviously sometimes they are also unhappily surprised how big the gap is between the planned savings and the actually realized savings. They underestimate complexity in the whole industry a bit, especially when they are not like long-term industry specialists already. And then also small execution issues can quickly turn into material risks. Yeah.
So you highlight a lot the fact of holistic and global ability to.
And that's, I think you see a pattern a little bit here. It's really that boards and also like executive teams often treat logistics as the cost center instead of looking at it as like the platform who can support in decision making, in risk avoidance, but also in topics like reducing the carbon footprint. So there's really a lot more to it than just cost management and cost center view.
Yeah, thank you. Another topic I like to talk about is transformation. Many companies are implementing transformation projects. In your experience, where do companies most often misallocate capital?
Yeah, very often companies overinvest in tools to fix individual parts of the process and the problem and not look at the entire process and the end-to-end view first, and also on the ownership, who should own which part of it. So very often people automate complexity instead of reducing complexity by fixing the structure first before automating things. Yeah. So I think that's, in my view, a very often, because it's a complex industry when you look at that supply chain. And another thing I see sometimes is, and also boards do that, they invest in one-time projects rather than in the long-term view of the entire problem. Yeah. So that's going hand in hand with sometimes chasing the short-term return on investment instead of the long-term decision basis to invest into that more.
That's a good point. And maybe to deep dive, I will ask the reverse question. When should they increase capital to have a better impact in the project?
So I think you see a little bit where I'm going with that. It's really not in singular point solutions, but to invest in platforms. Platforms is really something that can provide to executives and the board really that entire view, and to bring the complexity of the whole supply chain on, I would say, on a paper, and make it a bit more visible. Yeah, so that for me is one big point. And the other thing is also data quality. Data quality is often very poorly, and also no platform and no tool will help if the data going into that is not clean and structured enough. So that's two key topics for me.
Yeah, that's an important reminder.
Yeah, and I mean, then of course setting up corporate structures, making sure change management is done, people follow. So this obviously has to go with it. But for me, it's really like the platform end-to-end view and the data quality are key topics. Yeah.
Thank you. Is there a financial blind spot that causes most logistics transformation initiative to underdeliver?
I think the worst decisions are those that are not made. So underestimating the cost of inaction and of stagnation is definitely something. Yeah. Of course, it needs some time to make a well-considered decision, but then it's time to take it and to move. So that for me is I think one of the biggest costs I see. Sometimes also people underestimate how much the right incentivation can drive success. And also when you look at success, how is it defined? Very often it's defined by delivering certain milestones. So again, like a very isolated view, instead of looking at the end goal and the end achievement as the real target and celebrating that success once it's completed.
Thanks. And you talk a lot about change in a world of permanent volatility. How should leaders balance predictive planning versus reactive budgeting?
Predictive planning really sets the boundaries, which I think is very key. While reactive budgeting manages a short-term view, it's a little bit always behind the problem, fixing what already went wrong and adjusting to it. So sometimes this is totally needed. You cannot go without, and you need to adapt and you need to reforecast. But it's really important to always get back ahead of the problem, setting the structure and setting the boundaries and looking at the journey that we want to go together as a company. And then in the end, leaders need really like a long-term view for decision making, and not like a constant reforecasting. They need stability and predictability.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Julia. Before we wrap up, I like to end up with our 2 signature questions. So my first one for you will be, is there one industry rule you will change?
Looking at the finance point of view again, it's going with what I said before, not making logistics as a cost center, but making it a platform to enable decision making and avoid risk. So this is one thing I would really like to change, to lift it up a little bit on the podium. And then also that accuracy matters, yes, but also speed does. So both is really key. Yeah.
Thank you. And my last one.
Yes.
If there was one advice you could give to our audience, what would it be?
Yeah, again, it's invest how decisions can be made and facilitated, and not just tracking costs.
Thank you very much, Julia. Thank you for your time.
It's a pleasure.